Welcome to What CEOs Talk About. Do you wonder what CEOs talk about behind closed doors? How they bring their vision to reality? How do they overcome and succeed through adversity? We share that and so much more with each episode. Now, let's get started with the show.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Martin Hunter. I am the host of What CEOs Talk About, where we translate strategy into frontline operations. Today, my guest, Kathleen. Kathleen, what do you do? What's your shtick? What do you do in life? Let's tell the world. I'm done asking questions. It's better off if you tell the world what you do for a living.
Yeah. I am the founder of Naviga Recruiting and Executive Search. We've been around for almost 20 years now, and we place sales, marketing, and operations people around the nation, but for like worldwide companies. So That's what I do. I run the operation day to day and have a lot of fun doing it.
Oh my goodness. HR recruiting and for sales as well. Talk about volatile salespeople.
Yeah. I mean, we place really high level salespeople. So, yeah, we might get those types every once in a while, but for the most part, we're dealing with some pretty professional people who are, steady eddies. And
yeah. I am always hard with any companies that work under our portfolio. I'm always hard on salespeople. I was like, if there is something that is very measurable is sales. And so there's such a high in selling and making sure that the company gets to where it's at. There's a lot of validity and on the other hand, there's a lot of measurables that you can do with sales. Anyways, I ask a very curious question. So Kathleen, people are watching this probably know you who you are and know you well. What's the one thing that they don't know? What's the quirk? What's the one thing that people go, I did not know that about Kathleen?
Well, maybe the predominant audience that's going to see this won't know it. The few will. But I'm really, really strange. I am. I'm so strange. I mean, I'm running a successful business, but there's a side of me that is very quirky and very like fun loving and like soft hearted and just plain weird. I'm very approachable. So in most people, I am very small. I'm 4'11". And so when they hear me on the phone or Zooms, but then they meet me in person in business, they're like, I was not expecting this. Like,
it's true. Yeah.
Small woman. So yeah.
It's true. I would have pictured you like 5'6", 5'7", somewhere around there, right? Really? But you're this tiny. It's funny because I get a similar people like come in and I'm 5'8" with my sneakers on. So I walk in and they go, "Oh, you're Martin Hunter." I say, "Yeah." Expecting something like 6 foot tall. What's wrong with being short?
Yeah. Well, even in your intro video on your podcast, you don't look shorter. You look like seriously like this, like you're commanding attention while you're walking. You can't even tell. So I'm not trying to hide it though. I embrace my littleness. So.
I absolutely. It's funny. My nickname at work, people in my partnership, they call me Thanos. So we can go into that a little bit later on. But they found on the web 10 qualities that Thanos had, and they said, "Hey, you're Thanos. Yeah, all 10 qualities." I was like, "Oh, is that a compliment?" Anyways, we're digressing. Kathleen, what is the title of the show that you've picked?
The funnest part. I get to pick it.
Yes.
It is Stick to the Fundamentals in a Competitive Game. That's the title.
I coach rugby. Rugby is part of my life, and I coach my boy and my girl. And that is the thing that we always go back to. When you think about it, if you drop the ball, you lose. If you don't handle the ball properly, if you don't kick the ball properly, all those things that just forget about the tactics and, hey, blue 45 and all those things. If you can't run, pass, and catch the ball, you can't score tries. If you can't score tries, you can't win the game. So absolutely fundamental. And that is applicable to any game, especially in business.
Yes.
So tell us about your story. Who's Kathleen? Back in, I'm not going to say the date because I don't know the date, but back when. So where'd you grow up? How did you grow up? And what led you to where you are today?
Chicago. Born and raised, started my business career there in my 20s. Raised by a very Irish family. Very. My grandparents came over from Ireland, and my dad was 100% Irish. All my aunts, uncles, just Irish community, Irish culture.
So profanity runs in your family as well. We were talking about this in the pre-show.
Yes, profanity does run in our family. Very direct, us Irish folk. So,
what do you like best of your heritage? When you think of your heritage, what's the legacy that your parents and your family, when you think about who you are, Kathleen, today, what's the one fundamental legacy that people have left in you?
They worked their ass off, and I said I wasn't going to curse, right? They worked hard workers. I learned my work ethic from my grandpa, my aunts, my uncles, my, father, my mother. Just some major hustle, that I hope my kids also have been observing in me. So, yeah, I would say so.
Good. Let's flip the coin. What's the legacy? Because parents always screw your life up. No matter how good you are of a parent, your kids always say, "Dad, you screwed my life up." What's the one thing, the flip coin, that you go, "Oh, I wish my parents would have taught me this"? What's the one thing that you feel that you were not necessarily missing, but you could have done better, or your parents could have prepared you better for a certain aspect of life?
Maybe an openness to communication. Back then it was one-way communication. Like, it's their way or the highway. And there was no negotiation, or anything like that. I mean, I struggle with it because in some ways, it's made me who I am today. But in other ways, maybe it limits the possibilities. Like right now, I'm learning a new style while raising my kids because I wasn't really raised that way. It was more direct. I just didn't have a voice, I think.
No, I get you. I mean, I tell my kids, like, when I did not do something well, like my dad used to slap me. Like back then, it was just like, "Oh yeah, smarten up." Okay. And then you kind of like, "Okay, I won't do that again." And then wooden spoons. My mom was not the best cook, but man, she had a lot of wooden spoons. So
you're identifying with me right now.
I am of Scottish heritage, so very Celtic upbringing as well. So tell us about your business. So tell us about what you do. How did it come? So, some guests, they have a very precise moment in time. They go, "This is when it happened." Some went, "I started on this path, and all of a sudden, I stood still, and I went, oh, I'm on a different path." So tell us, how did you get to where you are, and where does your business kind of stem from, grow from? Do you remember when you planted the seed? Like, some people have very specific, some others don't. So what's your story?
My story is, I started in corporate recruiting and corporate recruiting leadership. And then I was an expat overseas in Amsterdam. Yeah.
Oh.
Loved it. I was there for 2 years. But then 9/11 happened, and then they shut down, Naviga and our European operations. So I came home with a severance to the US, and I said, what do I want to do? I kind of learned the European lifestyle of just enjoying myself, not only my career. And so I kind of took that mindset. I didn't know I was taking that mindset. And I said, what do I want to do differently? So I gradually started consulting and helping companies, like executives that I knew over the years, positions. And it just was I hate saying this because I am a humble person, but it was way too easy. Like to get the business and then fill it. And it's just like, all right, this is like easy money. It just came really natural for me. And then it just grew organically from there. I started hiring contractors. Then I was making enough money to then hire perm recruiters, built out my marketing. My marketing's insane. You know, I don't have a direct sales force. I just have a marketing machine, essentially. Like the stuff that people are doing today in terms of digital marketing, we started doing it in 2008 with blogs and stuff, very progressive. And so it's just been like a tumbleweed effect in terms of marketing, and our growth is just insane. It is interesting. We do a lot of business with European companies because they see that I was an expat, even after all these years. I mean, we've been around for 20 years. It was 20 years ago. But I think they identify with like, oh, okay, so she'll be able to work with us, you know? And so we do a lot of business with companies overseas.
It opens up.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say who want to hire in the United States for the first time, you know, things like that.
There's this, my children are, I was an expat, so I went through the army, then the military, and then went into mining and oil and gas and traveled the world. And there is a friend of mine I interviewed, Nigel Bennett. He took his family out for a full year. He said, okay, AquaGuard, he's like, okay, he had his coach, and he says, there was one thing I need to do is I want to take my family on a full year worldwide adventure. And he did all of that, comes back to AquaGuard. Hey guys, haven't seen you in so long. Hey, how's it been? How was your trip? Great. 10 minutes later, everybody's back to the same thing. So your mind expands when you live and breathe different cultures. And we're not saying that the way of Italians is different, but taking the time, I think that the one thing that North America does not understand is the value of rest. So I think that is a key component, a big difference between Europe and North America.
Yeah.
Because I want to include Canada and Mexico. We're very entrepreneurial throughout North America, and I think that sometimes we forget that being able to spend time with family is key. And
number one.
Did you always want to be in HR? Like when you started your career, did you always want to be in HR, or did you start with bigger dreams or different dreams?
I was going to be a legal secretary.
Really?
Yeah, it's like I went to this business college that had like these legal, paralegal and assistant programs. They called it secretary back then too.
Oh my God. How derogatory is that now, right? When you think about it, it's so unwoke.
I was a late bloomer as I, got my bachelor's degree and I was exposed to things, and I went overseas for a semester in Austria, and I was like, ooh, like there's more to this. And then I did an HR internship. I thought I wanted human resources properly, like just, compensation, benefits and stuff like that, and bored me. To this day, it bores me. And then I got exposed to recruiting, and I was like, ooh, I'm kind of liking it. And it came easy. And, it's I have not gotten sick of it. In all these years, I have not gotten sick of it. It's just something that I just really love, really love, and enjoy.
So what is it that you love about it then? So what from the HR? I won't put assumptions. So what bores you from regular HR, and what really excites you from recruiting?
Maybe like the protocol of HR,
the process,
the regulatory,
components
association
of
it all. Yeah. And then with recruiting, like no day is the same. Oh my gosh, especially what we do. I mean, we do business with so many different industries and companies and people, and we're exposed to so many things, and then so many different backgrounds that we have to get. As long as it's in the basket of sales and marketing and operations, we're doing it, but we're learning about so many different industries. So I think, I don't know, my personal life is very stable, so maybe this is like an excitement for me. I don't know.
It's so funny because my brother is the head of sales, a VP of sales, and he's got a whole of North America for a flooring company. And it's so funny because he is a high pace environment, and hey bro, how's it going? Good. What's different than yesterday? Nothing. And he's just a barrel of laughs. He's so funny. But he says, if you take my life over the past 20 years, nothing has changed except the people that I deal with. So on the sales side of things, so I hear that entrepreneurial spirit in you where you want to solve problems. You like diversity. You like change. And like you said, because you don't get it at home, maybe that's what you love so much about it. That's really. What's the one thing you don't like about recruiting?
What don't I like about recruiting? I mean, the pitfalls when it all doesn't go our way, you know?
Who does, right?
I know. I like it to go our way. I like when clients behave and they're operating at, an impressive manner and listening to our best practices and stuff like that. When they're not, it's kind of a drag because we've been at this for so long. It's like we know how to do it. I'm not opposed to learning new things, and I do every day, but we kind of get this thing now. So
you hired a professional to do your recruitment. Don't tell me what to do. Just trust me and give me what you're looking for. And I know. I get you. I get you. All right, let's go back to the title. Okay. Why did you pick that title?
It's what I'm living right now and observing like crazy. With companies, recruiting firms, HR practices, you name it. Like the market is so hot right now and everyone is trying to like take a hold of what the biggest gimmick might be or the biggest trend might be to actually hire talent in a competitive market. So it's dear to my heart because I kind of sit back, like literally, if you could see me, like I kind of sit back and I, like in a chill manner, like it's just my personality. And I'm like, stick to the fundamentals. What are you guys doing? Like you guys are all over the place. Like if you just narrow in on what works, and have best practices around those things, you're going to be very successful in this market. You can't do any quick fixes right now to get candidates. No. If you don't have these practices in place long term or historically. So it's interesting.
It's so relative because we optimize portfolios for private equities and mergers for large scale organizations. And they always say, well, can you find us the right people? I'm like, I'm not a recruiter. And no matter how much the entire world is in shortage. I think it was on LinkedIn as I say, hey, be kind to the people who are serving you. At least they showed up for work or something like that.
Yeah.
I was witness to one of those activities close to my house that just broke my heart.
Really?
Just that the client was just being very disrespectful, and it was just like, hold on a second, this person's working. There's at least she's showing up and she's asking you, and could you please have the decency of treating this human being like a human being?
Right.
And a lot of companies, I think, are forgetting that. And I think that it's becoming pivotal. When you look at the logistics requirement, what took 6 to 8 days to get from Asia to North America is now taking 6 to 8 weeks to get.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been trying to get somebody to come in and do the electrical work in the house that we've got, and I've been waiting 6 months. And no matter how much you look at getting people in, it's just there's a shortage everywhere. So, and this is where we can take a little bit from the Europeans in regards to it is what it is. Just be like, I don't know. I lived in France for a long time, and sorry for all my French friends, but I'm going to use a French accent. I am a baker. My father was a baker. My grandfather was a baker, and my great-great-grandfather was a baker. So they instill that perfection and that quality in the work that they produce, and they have pride. And I think that we've lost a bit of pride in what we do, and realize that, hey, we can grow the company year over year and just accept that you're going to make the same amount of money as you did last year, which is acceptable at a good profit, and just build efficiency within the company.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's a key fundamental. Yeah. What else do you see that you feel that they're not abiding by the fundamentals?
I just think they're missing. They're missing the fundamentals, and they don't have them in place. So when this is going on and where they need workers, and just remember, I deal with B2B high level people for the most part. So, you know, it's just telling, you know, like, so a football team, when they're ready for, you know, getting ready for the Super Bowl, they don't just turn on, you know, their training on that particular day. You know, they've got these, just like you were saying about rugby. I mean, they've got these things in place, the techniques, the strategy, the, you know, the fundamentals that keep them competitive during, you know, non-playoffs. So when the playoffs are here and the Super Bowl is presented, you know, are you going to be ready, or are you not? Or are you going to be freaking out and trying every maneuver that wasn't on, let's say, the playlist, right, at that game, at that given time? That's not going to work. So I sit back and I watch, like, a lot of employers trying to do things that might seem cool and, like, tricky in this market, and it's just not going to work. It's not going to stick. You've got to have some stuff in place. So the let's put some real advice out there. You know, having led and managed and owned many companies, and I've failed numerous times as an entrepreneur, I have a longer list of what not to do than what to do. Right. And I think that comes through experience, right? So when we hire for attitude, skill, knowledge, and experience, in that order, that experience shows in what not to do to be able to get where you need to be. With that being said, what's the things that you see are happening currently that you go, come on, guys, you shouldn't be doing this? Yeah. What do you see? Maybe going out and buying new tools, like quick fix tools, like tons of tools that maybe offer like names and numbers and like emails and like just trying to do quick fix, like reach outs maybe one time to somebody and not having an actual plan, you know, for those reach outs for potential employers. You know, running endless advertisements, you know, where the ROI is like nothing. And we all know it. Nobody's applying, but yet they're getting the budgets to go post and just, you know, cross their fingers. So, I mean, those are just a few things, you know, a few like quick fix tactics that people are trying to do. But, you know, it ends up, I don't know, not working in the long run when you have a market like the market is right now. If it was just a standard marketplace and not as competitive, maybe you can get away with that. But what I'm saying is you need these things. You should have had these things in place in order to win the game. And the game right now is the competitive marketplace for talent. So you feeling me?
Yeah, absolutely. So what should companies put in their playbook? Okay, so we're faced, you've got, so let's set the stage a little bit. So we've got a company, let's say between 25 and around $50 million gross revenue a year. Okay. Yeah. They've got a base of employees nationwide, and they're like, okay, tap is running dry. We've got somewhat of a good culture. We're not perfect. You know, we have a good work culture. People are treated with dignity and respect. We're not getting anybody through the door. What's a practical, what's your thoughts on a fundamental skill set there that could weigh in getting an employee or not?
Yeah, I would say employer branding. So branding the employer as a company, as a culture, as a character, as a personality, as a heart, right? In advance of these times. And so if you're establishing an employer brand, and then having kind of like marketing and advertising around that brand, when somebody is ready to make that change and a new position, they're going to think of that employer brand because that brand has been in front of them on a regular basis. There are platforms that these people are hanging around or these people are hanging around in bars, like say if it's, you know, another caliber or whatever, but staying in front of this audience. So when it is time, they're going to come to you and they're going to recognize you and they're going to know that you have a differentiation in the marketplace because, oh, I've been seeing them for the past 2 years, you know?
So keep the story alive, right? Same thing as you would do for your product, you know, brand marketing or branding. You want to create a relationship between the consumer or customer, even if it's B2B, between you and that customer. It's that story that is your brand. So you reverse that. From what I'm hearing is you kind of reverse that and you go, okay, let's engage our employees to tell our stories so that other employees, regardless of where they come from, they know what we stand for because other people are telling our stories or our employees are telling our stories.
Yeah. And if you think about it, there has to be like a difference in paradigm where the employer wants to sell the organization in order to get top talent and not the employer is this like gate that says, I'm not going to let you into my system until I know who you are. I evaluate you. So it's a paradigm of opening themselves up, you know, and having the masses be interested in joining. And then, because that's the selling mindset of an employer versus one that says, get out of here. You're not worth our time. You know, you can't do that. You can't do that right now. And you can't do that period. And I think people are learning. So
what do you think about this comment that you hear often is hire slow, fire fast?
I like it. It depends how slow.
Okay.
Right? I'm so literal. But it does. It depends how slow. Like our average date to fill is 45 days if a client is behaving for the most part. Just from opening the position.
I love how you're like, if the client is behaving. So be a good boy, be a good girl. If you're a good boy, you're a good girl. You'll get your gift in 45 days.
Right. And that's hiring slow. Like it's not 48 hours or whatever. That means that the employer has a process, right? Probably different players in the evaluation, all that stuff. So I agree with that, you know, and I agree with, you know, usually people don't change. If you're seeing that they're not performing, I think we need to fire them. Let's talk to them about it. But if they don't turn it around, let's go. So
hail to that, Kathleen. Hail to that.
Hail to that.
Performance two little organizations do performance management in an objective way. They always go, oh, that person is not performing. Well, you've got a gut feeling that they're not performing, but how did you measure that beforehand? Oh, now you're going to start measuring? So why didn't you start measuring from day one by having one-to-one? Well, they've only been here for a week. Oh yeah, you can still evaluate their performance in the week. Like their performance is relative to what the expectation was. So if you expected them to have their email ready and they don't have their email ready, well, that's a performance management. Exactly. Right? So we're very big in installing a code of conduct all the time, because that speaks volume. When you're I encourage all of our clients to always put their core values in the expectations of job descriptions or responsibilities, right? I want you to, so one of our clients has, you know, candor. So they want people to be honest and transparent right from day one. So what are you going to ask? What kind of questions are you going to ask to be able to do that? And so I think that's a fundamental skill, is to ensure that regardless if you're hiring or you're not hiring, you should always act in the way as if somebody was to come in. Yeah. And what is it? ABS always be selling, or all be whatever, but it should be always be hiring. ABH.
Yeah. Hey, on the behavior statement that you made, and I agreed with, one of the things that we ask during our intake / like calibration call is, tell me in the first 90 days, what behaviors are you going to want to see? And actually, we asked the first 30 days, 60 days, and then results 90 days. What behaviors are you going to want to see in order to know that you've made the right decision? Because in 30 days, come on, we're watching behaviors, not necessarily results, right?
Agreed.
It's a beautiful question, because then it's like, all right, this is the culture. We've got to make sure that we're crossing the T's and dotting our I's and getting that type of person. So, yeah.
When we build a code of conduct with clients, we go, okay, what are your core values? Put a narrative, because you can say, I don't know, we care about stuff. Okay, so what's your definition of care? There has to be a narrative that defines or a leadership. Okay, well, you want to talk about, all encompassing. So what does that mean? We tend to push them to have statements. One of the funniest we had was, I think they took it out from the movie Commando. I can't remember. It's like, we eat Green Berets for breakfast. For them, that was one of their core values.
Really?
I'm like, what the hell is that? Well, because they wanted the term courageous. I said, everybody puts courageous out there. So I said, what's fun? What's in? And so one guy says, he said it in a very kind of Arnold Schwarzenegger way. He says, oh, let's have courage. And the other person says, oh, let's eat Green Berets for breakfast. I was like, oh, damn, that's so good. That's so good. So we put a narrative against it. And I said, okay, so what's the definition of courage? So we put Arnold Schwarzenegger. What does Arnold do? He says, I'll be back, right? He's always making sure that, things are circled through. So they had a really fun code of conduct, but that was behavioral based. And that was the key to saying performance management. Am I seeing this? And it comes from behavioral based safety as well. And I think that what people are finally realizing is that companies are very transient right now. And how will you be a transformational organization where people want to be part of your organization? Because when they go in and when they leave, they're two different people. In a better way, I hope. In a better way, I hope. These lifers, when your parents and my parents were working, there was 30, 40 years at the same organization, and that was the end of that.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
That transformational instead of being transactional, I think, is a key component as well.
Yep, I would agree. There aren't a lot of people that stick around that long these days. If they do, the environment is ever changing. Mm-hmm. I talked to a guy just yesterday, and he's been somewhere for 15 years, and he told me like all the different operational changes. He just keeps getting challenged, and there's been lots of ups and downs, but never too low to take them down, And so people do still stay, but it's not as common, is it?
Yeah, because I wonder what the data would provide. I think they would say like 36 months. I think 3 years seems to be, or even less, I would assume. Like if you think of all the people that have got work for, a week and left or 2 days and left.
Yeah, that's true. And companies aren't talking about long-term plans anymore. Like, back in the days, they might say, I know what is your 10-year plan? You ask a business and they would, have it. And nowadays, companies are living about 3 to 5 years out. Mm-hmm. They're just very different because technology is changing them. The environment's changing them, culture, everything. So, I mean, just if you think about that in itself, that employers just aren't sticking to, let's say, a 5 to 10 year plan right now because things are changing.
Oh, one of the things that during COVID, we saw a lot of people coming to us and say, hey, help us deal with the situation. And we had been always advocating an AOP, an annual operating plan, because that's very measurable and tangible. You know that things are, you throw a pandemic in there, but that changes the world. But you can pretty much assure yourself that what you plan over a year will come to fruition within, 20%, right? 5 years nowadays, who knows? Who thought that, seriously, look at Zoom. Look at what we're doing right now. Like that would have not been possible pre-COVID, right?
I know.
And if it wasn't for COVID, I wouldn't have this show. So
Okay, so you started it in the pandemic.
Well, yeah, I traveled a lot, and I was meeting a whole bunch of people, and so as I was traveling from Dallas home, this guy says, "What do you do for a living?" And I started talking about what we were doing, and I was reflecting on that, and I was like, how I don't have those conversations anymore. And I said, "Oh, well, let me reach out to my friends." And my buddy said, "Well, why don't let's do a podcast?" I was like, "Okay," and. So he's like, it's funny because he said, "Well, what are we going to talk about?" He says, "Well," then he said, "I'm a CEO, you're a CEO. So what do CEOs talk about?" And so like, damn, that's the title of the show. That's the title of the show. And it's stuck, and it's very conversational because Kathleen, if it wasn't for this podcast, I wouldn't be talking to you. Right. Yeah. And so for me, it's very, there's a huge human factor to it. For me, that's very important, is connecting. And if people can learn from this show about what you do and how you do it, and somebody can reach out and really, and you can help somebody through the means of this, and somebody's listening to it and says, "Hey, what Kathleen said really, really landed with me." So, somebody can learn from that. Let's talk about something a little bit more touchy. How do you feel now you deal a lot with hiring. Is gender inequality still big out there? Do men and women still get paid differently?
Yeah. We're not there yet.
Damn.
We're not there yet.
So what can we do? What can we do, you and I right now talking, what can we do to influence that situation? Because I don't think it's fair to any women currently, and to my daughters. I want to do whatever we can through this means to solve this and try to influence people to do better things. So how do we save the world right now, Kathleen?
Well, there's one thing that the Supreme Court is doing state by state, and they put legislation in place where you can't ask anyone what they're currently making.
Oh, really?
Yeah, state by state. So there might be 25 to 30 states already doing this mandate. Mm-hmm. And it's a game changer, because if you ask somebody what they're currently making and you're offering, you already know, like, you could offer them 40 more on the base salary. But if they're making,
less than average,
yeah, like, the employers historically has been inclined to not give them anywhere near that. So that's why it's being eliminated. And they're actually now in discussions of putting something in place on job descriptions to state what the compensation is. So employers can't scoot around that at all. Because if it's out there, it's out there. Now, when you asked me, what do we do? No, you said, is it still going on? I will tell you that most of my clients and employers, they're playing by the rules, because we've kind of coached them on this legislation. Like, literally for the past 2 to 3 years, this has been happening state by state. And we actually have on our submittal form the information about the candidate that we can't ask their current base salary in this specific state.
Gotcha.
So what do they have to go by? Just the candidate's expectations and the employer's, compensation range. So it's starting to happen. It really is, in a more positive way, an equal way, period. But I will say, when we ask women what they're currently getting paid for, let's say, the same job, and they're always lower.
Damn.
They're just always lower. Maybe not by tons.
Yeah, but there is a difference.
But there's a difference. And I see it. My team sees it, and it's just something we've always been used to seeing it.
Yeah, Scandinavia has a very open, how you work in North America and people don't ask how much you make because they don't want to know how much you make, and it's secret, top secret. Did you get more than I did, and how much you make? Where in Scandinavia, it is absolutely transparent. Yeah. And if you've got 4 VPs, the VPs all make the same money. If you've got directors, all directors make the same money across the board. Managers make money the same. They say, okay, this job for this job. Now, I mean, I'm generalizing, but if there's a technical manager that what their job is, regardless of age, sex, color, race, religion, anything, it's very transparent. Now they've got their issues as well, which is not. I mean, $40 for a cheeseburger is pretty expensive, but So then, let me ask you another question that I think a lot of people, you being an HR specialist, the big question, and I have not seen this in my recent, well, I shouldn't say my recent year. I think the debate that I'm trying to say here is, when people say, well, who starts first? When an employer asks you how much do you want, what's your salary expectation? Well, I'm expecting a range of between 156 and 175 because I did my research and this is what it said. What is your professional opinion? Should people out there go, hey, listen, I don't want to make 200,000, but I don't want to say 200,000 because I don't want to be ousted because my demands are too high. What's the fundamental skill for somebody who wants to be hired and wants to have that conversation?
Let's just be direct and be transparent and just tell me what you need. Everybody knows, especially when they get to a certain level in their life, they know what they want for their standard of living and their lifestyle, like period. And usually the position that they're in at that given time is supporting that lifestyle. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, we always say, what are your expectations on base salary and what are your expectations on total compensation? And if it fits in our ranges, let's bring them on through and to the next step in the evaluation process. That's actually one of the number one questions we ask because it's just an absolute waste of time. Absolute waste of time. So what are you thinking?
For me, one of the things that I always, chicken or the egg. If I say, well, I want $200,000 and here's Martin applying for a job and he wants, and it's like, I think that's the high end of the salary, but I really want the job. Will I be ousted? Will I lose the opportunity if I ask too much?
Yeah. If you want the job that bad, where the job is the priority versus, let's say, saying that number, then somebody can position it where, listen, I want to just, remain open in conversation with what they're paying. Could you tell me the range? And then I'll tell you if that's it's not too much of a game for them to come out and say that in that manner. But for the most part, people do give their compensations, and if it's a fit, we continue discussions. If it's not, most of them are just like, listen, thank you so much. I really appreciate talking about that up front. Yeah. Because they want to get paid what they want to get paid.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. Kathleen, what is in your entrepreneurial journey, what has been the toughest time in your life when you go, I came very close to throwing in the towel, or it was a year I toughed it through, but man, oh man, was this ever difficult.
Gosh, I've had a few of those. It's not been
give us one where you had the biggest learning. You went, oh, this is what I really learned from this.
Okay, this is a really good one.
I'm listening.
So when my business was doing really well, there was a business consultant that came into my life, and he wanted to help scale the business. Okay. And he had all these ideas. They weren't mine. It wasn't my intention to do that. Okay. So he wanted to scale the business. Let's go get this massive office space. Let's fill it with sales reps and multiple recruiters. It didn't match like I had always grown the business organically, like with no investors, constant revenue increase, no major losses or anything like that. And I would say that that was one of the biggest mistakes that I listened to this person. I went against the grain, against my gut of how I like to operate and do business. And it didn't work out. Like we were in over our head. Deals weren't closing fast enough to cover things. And it got me into a pickle. And I didn't like it. So I took all that crap away, and that pressure. And the business has grown like year after year in a dramatic, beautiful way. And, I can be happy. And my team gets paid well. We're happy. Like it's a good scenario that we're in now. But that was my biggest mistake.
You went back to the fundamentals, eh?
I did.
You listened to your own advice. So Kathleen, when did this happen? How many years ago?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Maybe 2010.
Okay, so 11 years ago. All right,
yeah.
Kathleen of the past, you're going to go back to the future. You're going to listen to the podcast. It'll probably be a month from now. So go a month in the future. Listen to what Kathleen 2021 is telling you. Don't get that consultant. He's a moron.
Ever again.
What is the highlight of your journey so far? Business, I'm sure let's go personal and business. And I'm sure that as an entrepreneur, they're somewhat related. I'm sure of it.
Really? We'll see. Let's see. Personal highlight. I mean, I've had 3 kids under this business. My oldest is 18. And my youngest is about to turn 14 this weekend. So,
Damn.
Yeah, they've seen me do this. This is just what I do to them.
I like that. That's what I do to them.
This is just what mom does, Successful marriage. I mean, that's a huge highlight. Like really, really supportive husband. Awesome dad. Like I said, stable personal life while the while this journey's going on. And then what's been the highlight of the business life? Gosh.
Give me an event. Give me something that you go, wow, this was like, I'll give you mine.
Hitting $1 million in revenue.
Oh, nice. Good.
Yeah, hitting $1 million in revenue back in the day. I mean, that was pretty big. I thought it was so awesome, and it is.
You see those 6 zeros, it's pretty wild when you see those first 6 zeros. You're like, no way. No way.
I know. That was pretty huge.
Who's the person in business that you trust the most? You don't have to say their name, but they'll know who they are.
Well, then what would I say?
Oh, you can shout out their name if you want to.
Oh, I was gonna do I describe them? 6 feet, man. No, I'm proud to say it's my husband.
Oh, good.
Yeah, he's a huge supporter. He's a marketing genius. And
both of you work in the business?
No, he came to the business for a few years, just to stop by, let's say. But no, he's into sales. He's an executive into sales at another company. But we sleep together, so he lives and breathes and knows what's going on. We talk about it over wine. He's one of the most amazing minds I know. Very, very creative, forward-thinking, strategic. Puts me in my place. I like that. Of course I do. Irish, right? I like that, and he puts me in my place, and so he's my number one.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
If there was one thing that you can change, now you can't go back to the consultant and say, oh, I shouldn't have hired that consultant. If there is one thing that you can change in the past, saying, you know what, hindsight is 20/20. I would like to change this.
I didn't like when I was leading I went through a phase where again, I was looking at maybe like a best practice and a standard out there versus what I knew worked. And I was measuring out of my recruiting team, like literally down to the calls, reach outs. I will say I was doing that because like a grouping of them at the time sucked. So it was kind of like my last attempt to see like how I could control them maybe and influence their results. But what I learned is that that's not the way. And my organic leadership style works, where it's more like coaching and influence and example and I don't measure. I don't measure numbers. I measure behaviors like we talked about.
Hallelujah. Thank you, Kathleen, for
results.
those.
I do look at results. Of course, they have to be placing people, but it's behaviors. Are you showing up, trying? And if you're doing all these things, I know that the other stuff just comes, and that's who I am. I'm never going to change that stuff. I don't care if somebody tells me to. It works for me. My business is very successful. So that's who I am. I'm not going to do that again. That was a mistake. Another mistake. I love these mistake questions.
You learn so much. There's so many people that are transactional when it comes time to business. And what they forget is that the number is a result of a behavior.
Yeah.
So if you're driving down the highway and you're driving at above the speed limit, let's say you're driving at 55 miles an hour. Well, the car is not driving at 55. It's your foot on the accelerator that is making the car move at a velocity of 55 miles an hour. Yeah. So it is the behavior, right? A lot of people forget that feelings. So in the human emotional state is think, feel, do. Now we think of something, we put an assumption to it, we put whatever we want to it. We feel an emotion, that emotion drives the action. A lot of times we as human being cerebral, we can acknowledge and outdo our emotions. But when we see kids get angry, it's the emotion that's driving the action. So a lot of people forget that if you create an environment of safety where people feel comfortable and feel safe and feel rewarded, and they know that they're seen, they're heard, and that they matter, those feelings, the output is a minimum of 10 to 15% output more than if you were a transactional leader to pay somebody a certain amount. If you're a transformational organization and you pay somebody $100,000, you get $100,000. For most people who are, honest and transparent. And if you're a transformational company, you'll get 110, 115 K's worth out of that, often 95. People are ready to go a lot further when you treat them with dignity and respect.
Yeah. So when I was telling you this, the mistake about managing too hard, managing to the numbers, were you was your brain going off like crazy about this? You're like, of course, right?
It's so nice to hear it. And I think the fundamental to come kind of full circle is what Kathleen has been saying, is that what is the fundamental component of, if you eliminate everything else, we're still not in the age of fully robotic and full AI. You still have human beings, because Kathleen wouldn't be in business of recruiting people for other people if there weren't people involved. So when you take everything away, people are at the center of everything that we do.
Yeah.
So if the fundamental is to treat a human being the way that they should be treated, as equals, not above, not below, but on the same floor plan as you are, with your 2 feet grounded beside each other, that is the fundamental, in my opinion. Yeah.
I love it.
Can't go deeper than that. Oh my goodness. I'm all esoteric and all that stuff, but I love this stuff. This is important to me.
I love it, Mark.
Kathleen, what is the piece of reference? Maybe a movie, maybe a book, maybe a coach, a parent, a teacher, anything. What is something that you refer back to consistently? For example, for me, I always talk about a book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which was way back then, first things first. But there's a movie called Master and Commander, How to Lead People. And I always refer back to the Navy about leading people. And they say leading men back then. But I refer to that movie and that book continuously. And I live by those values. What are your 1 or 2 references that you always refer back to, Kathleen?
I have to give the same reference about Stephen Covey. I had about an hour drive to the city each day coming up in my career, and I had the cassette tapes of the 7 Habits. And I played the crap out of that. And these fundamentals were like embedded in my brain to this day. I don't think those like are the core of my existence and why I operate the way I do, but I do feel something powerful happened in learning them, in maybe reflecting on them, because even to this day, after 25 years later, I speak that language still from those 7 habits. I literally speak the language here and there. It comes out. It's pretty crazy. So that was a massive, significant, piece of the puzzle. And then people who saw the brightness in me, like I had some teachers and I had some really good bosses early on. They were men, and I learned from them. They coached on the spot. They saw a brightness in me that like lifted me up and took me under their wing in some major technology businesses. And I like thrived off that. It really did something about my confidence, these people, and they don't probably even know that they did this to me, but they did. They're in my story. They're certainly in my story. So significant bosses who can build you up while being direct and coaching and telling you your way isn't always the right way, and just a well-rounded coach. I had that in a few different people early on in my career, which was huge. You
seem very well-rounded as well.
Really?
I do. You're very composed. You're bright. I do agree with bright. You're both in emotional state and in mental state. I feel that you're out there. You're always open, kind of like a window on a sunny day. There's always hope with Kathleen, in my opinion. That's what I see. I see.
It's true. I'm a very positive person. I am. My daughter just said that. She said that you always see the bright side of things, like when she's having a rough time or whatever. And I do tend to, but not to be mistaken with, right? Somebody who doesn't have her head on, right?
Oh, no. I don't. Do I think you're a pushover? No way. No way. Tasmanian devils are like a foot tall, and they can bite your hand off. So I'm sure, Kathleen, you can hold your own. I'm sure you can. You might not be tall, but I'm sure I'd be perfectly scared of you. I'm sure of it.
I don't want you to be, but thank you very much, by the way, for the compliment. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome. Do you have mean eyes when you get angry at your kids? You put the mean eyes on and start using their full names.
I think the mean it's like in here, not necessarily in my eyes. Here. I have a lot of nonverbals.
Oh yeah, moms of 3 kids, they tend to scare the crap out of me. But anyway, including my own wife. My wife is not very much taller. She's 5'1", 5'2", and damn, she scares the crap out of me. She really does. And she's got mean eyes. She got big brown eyes, and when she looks at me, I'm like I just I think I'll go fishing now. Anyways, with that being said, Kathleen, thank you very much for being on the show. It is truly a pleasure. Thank you for all the wonderful and the trust in sharing these stories with myself and the audience as well. I'm assuming you're okay if people reach out to you?
Yeah.
Can you give us the full company name and everything like that and your details? Yeah,
you can find me just by Googling Kathleen Steffey. I'm all over the place. Kathleen's with a K and then Steffey, Steffey. business name is Naviga Recruiting and Executive Search.
Fabulous. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And the team will put all of the links in the comments below. So thank you again, Kathleen. It was a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you. I loved it. I really had a great time. I did.
With that being said, my name is Martin. I am your host of What CEOs Talk About, where we translate strategy into frontline operations. I always forget. Like, subscribe, whatever you have to do there. I don't know, the social handles and all that stuff. You guys know better than I do. Anyways, with that being said, thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thanks for tuning in to What CEOs Talk About. Make sure to click subscribe to get notified about future episodes, or check us out at www.whatceostalkabout.com.